We're live now. People are joining us. Elizabeth, great to see you.
Hi.
Oh, stuff just fell off my table. I was like, oh, earth moving. Ah, it's good to talk to you. I always appreciate seeing you. We were just talking about how tired we are, and it's this constant, ongoing, just everything. But it's the community that's keeping us going, and I appreciate having had the opportunity to get to know you better over the last couple of years. You are the second writer whose story I got boosted. I
Oh,
nominated
really? Oh,
you were the
cool.
second one. Yep. So it goes back a long time. Yeah, well, I wish I could do more. I always wish I could do more to support people. But the little bit is all we can do.
You do more than most people do.
Well, it's not so much
Honestly,
the bars down low, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, like, truly, most people that have the number of subscribers and followers that you do don't even respond to comments. Like, so I very much appreciate you, and I know all of the up and coming, writers that are on these platforms that you have amplified. Appreciate it because yeah, there are a lot of people that really don't care, and they'll be quick to like write something that sounds exactly like something you wrote last year, but not even respond to your comments. So anyway, um,
Well, let's just say, please, people, don't be a paid subscriber of those people. Be a paid subscriber of us. You see it so often. And it's just like the draw of the legacy media. And it's like, they got us here. That guy's got $1 million. Don't give him your $8 a month, please. He's not going to help you. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
rant. Yeah.
Well, that's I mean, that if you don't mind, I'll take the opportunity to segue from there because, I think one of the things. So the reason I reached out about this particular conversation, it was because you had mentioned nature and environmental destruction and devastation and all of that. And, for those who don't know me, I'm Elizabeth Sillick LaRue. I founded Conscientious Emigration. The principal objective of the main meat of my business is helping people to emigrate out of the US with their impacts, environmental, economic, and cultural impacts in mind. And, sort of it's as decolonial as we can get when we're moving from a high GDP country that is trying to dominate the entire world um, into countries that may be, developing or countries that are, in the West or whatever, and not perpetuating these colonial patterns. But what I worked on, I studied environmental law. So I went to school for women's studies and anthropology for my undergrad. And then years later, I went back to school. I went to law school and I studied environmental law. And one of the things that I realized after 2 decades in the environmental sector is that people don't, the average person who's not in the world of sustainability and environmental conservation and energy justice and all of these, interconnected environmental industry subsectors, people don't understand that these same dynamics that we see in electoral politics, in corporate hierarchy, in institutional cultures like government, like, big tech, all anything that you can think of, all of the same issues are present and intersecting with environmental extraction, environmental destruction, and the failure to plan for environmental sustainability into the future. It's all very much integrated, and even within the environmental conservation sector, whether you're talking about nonprofits that do, wildlife habitat conservation, whether you're talking about quasi-governmental agencies that implement, environmental regulations, whoever it is, all of the same dynamics are present. You cannot separate them. And what you were just talking about with, our common paradigm in the United States that you will not win an election unless you have millions and millions of dollars donated. Um, it plays out exactly the same way in environmental policy. So I'll give you an example. Um, I worked in fisheries management for a very long time. I'm a marine conservation obsessed person. You'll see here and there, I'll post videos of octopus that I encounter, squid that I encounter. I go snorkeling at least once a week, if not more. And in the fisheries management world in the United States, I can't speak for international because I haven't really done international work with any depth in the environmental world. But the people who have influence over the regulatory bodies that make decisions about how many fish people can take, which fish they can take, how big they need to be, all of that, with the objective of ongoing sustainability of these fisheries. Money talks. It's the same as everything else. The fishermen, the commercial operations that have the deepest pockets are the ones that call the shots. Where you have collectives or industry association groups that have financial backing from big players. Okay, for example, Walton, right? The Walton Foundation funds a whole bunch of work. I was working on projects that were funded by the Walton Foundation when I worked for a nonprofit organization.
Okay.
Same dynamics dictate our environmental policy. Even before this regime, I have
Yeah.
not done environmental work under this regime. I had contracts that I was supposed to have done work under. And they all, in beginning of 2025, all of them said, nope, we're not doing this. We can't do this. Because I was working on not just environmental conservation, but environmental justice. And yeah, so, yeah.
I've had a lot to think while you're saying that. I'm just sitting there thinking of all these different things, and it's always you start looking like the overarching things at work, and then we get to, and I kind of jump back and forth between specific examples and the overarching strategy. But more and more, I'm just coming to this realization: white supremacy is wealth. I mean, the plantation culture is the rich person culture, the billionaires, all this indoctrination. Oh, we have to be beholden to rich people because they're so much greater than us. They're superior to us. What other example would there be of how they got all that money? And just, but then there's
Mhm,
just an essential characteristic of white supremacy is that they live in the eternal present. They never consider the consequences of their actions. That comes
mhm.
back down to environmentalism. And now, like, bringing it back down, like in the state of Wisconsin, I've had to do these things where I had a bike and ski shop. So we were trying to preserve the trails in our area, and the ATV community and the snowmobile, they always wanted to take over our trails. So that,
Uh-huh.
and we'd do things like we'd organize like, silent rides for soldiers with PTSD in an attempt to appeal to for the help, because it does actually help. Just
Yeah.
going on a bike ride, not have you, be run over while you're trying to bike. And
Right.
so it actually was good but it was also like appealing directly to conservative mindset. And this is
Mhm.
where things get odd to me because, like you're talking about too, like it's a big game. Everybody likes their fishing, everybody likes to hunt. Well, if you're polluting the drinking water, you can't get through to them. You're like, little kids are going to die if you pollute. They just don't care. But if you're like,
No.
all the deer are going to die and you won't be able to hunt, oh, we got to do something about the drinking water. And it's like, I do kind of feel sick or dirty doing
Mhm.
this, but it's like I'm trying to get fresh drinking water and I'll do whatever means necessary. So, what are your thoughts on those ideas?
That is like you just described sort of the way that the mainstream environmental movement erupted, I guess, in the United States. It There's two separate, and I wrote an article about this that got 0 views. Um, but there's two sort of separate, or they are perceived as separate pathways in which this works. So you have environmental justice, right? When people talk about environmental justice communities or neighborhoods that are called sacrifice zones or neighborhoods where environmental racism is baked in literally to the infrastructure. For example, like a place like Houston, for example, where there's way too many chemical manufacturing plants, way too many oil refineries. All of the nasty, dirty stuff goes to that neighborhood, and guess who lives there? Black and Latino people.
Mhm.
In some cases, in rural areas, this is also disproportionately affects Native American people. But that sort of movement toward ensuring healthy environments or fighting for healthy environments across the board in equitable ways has operated separately from the mainstream environmental movement, which is what you're describing. And that mainstream environmental movement was uh I don't want to say conceived, like it began with exactly those people, sportsmen, the people we call sportsmen. Now let's take a quick step back and think about who gets to be a sportsman,
Mhm.
right? To
Rich.
be a
Yeah.
sportsman in society. And this is, yeah, going back to like the Teddy Roosevelt days, right? The people who were and going back before the United States. I mean, let's talk about, even in Europe and the monarchy and all of the royal family and all of that. Who gets to live the sporting life, right? It's always, first of all, men, traditionally.
Mhm.
Second of all, definitely white men, although men of every other racial category have done things in the wild, right? But that didn't mean that they had access, control, authority, input into management, right? But white men, um, I wouldn't say that, sexuality really played into it back when this started because people were just in the closet, right? But you're talking about wealthy white men that have leisure time, right? That have the ability to purchase all of the gear, have the right kind of vehicle. Back then maybe horses, to get around, right?
Yeah.
People that are land owning, upper class, leisure. It's really a leisure class of people. Now, these days, hunting and fishing is recreational for more than just the upper crust, right? But back when it started, it was very much we want to conserve these wild places so that we have a place to play.
Yeah.
Now, play in their case, and this is the other interesting thing. And this is the thing that gets to what you were saying, the frustration of knowing that you have to sort of bury your own values and your own disgust with who you're dealing with and with the reasons for their motivations for wanting
Yeah.
to conserve nature, which is to kill things.
Yeah.
It's to kill, right? And that is the ethos in the fisheries management world when I was working in that world was very much the people who have the most power, right, in influencing our representatives, who thereby influence legislation, that thereby influences the regulatory process. They are the sportsmen and the wealthy commercial fishermen, which at this point, it's industrial.
Mhm.
It's not you can't even call it small scale commercial in most cases. So as conservationists, right, trying to make a difference in policy, the only people who were really given credence, like we couldn't go as conservationists and say, we care about this, we're stakeholders, our opinions on this matter, and we want to see this body of water conserved because we value wildlife for its own sake. That doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
It has to it doesn't. It doesn't, even though it's true,
I
right?
know.
Even
I
though
am
it's
just
true.
gallows humor. I'm just being mad, laughing. I'm like, ah!
Yeah, yeah. It's the only way that you can effectively that you could effectively move these elected representatives and their appointed, regulatory decision makers was through this idea that we have to conserve, or not even conserve, I mean, we have to ensure that these fish are here around for us to kill in the future. And we have to ensure that, the water quality is sufficient to allow that to happen. in some cases, in some jurisdictions that are heavily dependent on tourism, then you may be able to get some traction with the argument that, for example, if there are toxic algae blooms happening on a
Mhm.
coast is, dependent on tourism from beachgoers and boaters or whatever, yeah, then you can say, hey, this is impacting the bottom line. And so we got to do something about it. That's the whole blue economy movement, right? But the issue is, it's always rooted in this idea, this
Yes.
fundamental idea that we as human beings, number one, and then not just human beings, but we as wealthy white male human beings have the right to profit from this resource, to extract as much as we possibly can without completely depleting it. And the reality is, they don't really care if you
Yeah.
completely deplete it as long as there's enough for them in their lifetime before they retire.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. I've got a lot of ideas I've been writing down, and what you're saying too, because ultimately, like, if I'm trying to appeal to have a silent trail for the sake of the veterans, as I'm making my argument, it's like I have to concede that conservatives care about veterans. So I
Yeah.
effectively am doing their work for them by saying, "You guys love veterans, so let's have this trail for them." And then so they have this mechanism set up with the way that because they're infants, not to be disrespectful to infants. I mean, these are like the whole conservative movement. They just sit themselves down. They refuse to change any perspective. And we have to go to such lengths because of like this adherence to decorum. And I guess in part, we've been trying to use the path of least resistance. Like, let's just get it done. Over the last year, I'm just like, these fucking people, it's just like we have to just humiliate them and shame them. They are nothing. They're killing people. I've been more and more. It's like the entire Republican movement is to cheat in elections, the Save Act, gerrymandering, voting roll purges, getting rid of the post office, getting rid of mail in ballots. And Democrats are like, well, hey, now we can't say that there was any election interference. It's like there's always election interference. There always is. And it's like, how are we in this? So it's like, this gets to what you said before too. I wrote an article that didn't get any hits. Well, welcome to my life. And it's just sort of like 5 years later, people will be again, some rich person will be like, here's my idea. And they'll be get $1 million for it. It's like, that's my fucking idea. I said it 5 years ago because we have
Oh,
that,
that's
and we're
my
at that
story
edge.
of my life.
Yeah.
Story of my life.
We're pushing the Overton window, but we're out on we're at the extreme fringe of it where we're pushing, pushing, pushing. And years later, it will become normalized, but we're getting there. And I'll drive people away when you're trying to push these things harder. Getting back though
Yeah.
to, I left a message about Roosevelt. And I mean, because everybody looks back, oh, look at Roosevelt and, establishing the parks. It's, yeah, but he didn't live in an era where human beings could destroy the planet. It's a different philosophy and it's like the figures of the past, just forget about that. That is meaningless today. And especially like, I don't even know if they take him as a conservative champion or what they think. Well, he was the sportsman. He cared about this and that. It's like, look, all that's different. And like you said, yeah, let's like the idea that we can't even make headway and just trying to create breathable air and drinkable water. It's like, and like we just get laughed out of the room just for even talking about that. And that's where our fight is, everybody. And we can't defer and do these things like, well, let's just play with what their interests are and manipulate them. No, at some point, we just have to recognize the entire conservative movement is a threat to humanity. They are anti human. They're killing people. They're destroying the planet. Their whole wealth mechanism is all a lie. It's all just invented. They just print up the paper and charge us interest for using it. That's the same people. And so, like, that whole control mechanism has to be just, and if it takes like, yeah, we should be worried about the earth becoming uninhabitable. Our children are literally going to die of thirst, which is probably the worst way to die. And it's just not. It's like that just has to enter into the conversation. We got to force it in there. We can't stop retreating just for the sake of the present. We got to think of the longer future. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I want to tell you three stories, three three interactions that I had when working in that context. And I was working in the Gulf of Mexico, okay? In the United States Gulf of Mexico. I traveled throughout from Texas to Florida, and I was working with fishermen from those states. So I'm talking about people that voted for Trump the first time, laughed at me when I told them that I'm from New York. I know Trump. He's a clown and he went bankrupt and he's a loser and they had nothing. First of all, anything
You're just
coming out of my
jealous.
mouth,
Yeah.
first of all, anything coming out of my mouth was automatically suspect because number one, I'm a woman. So one of the primary people that I had to, negotiate with and try to work with to advance some of these conservation objectives was someone who said very openly on social media, women just simply don't rate. Women can never live up to men. Women can never be as competent as men in any, so already like nothing that comes out of my mouth is going to be influential to them. But I'll tell you 3 stories. Okay, one, this is a demonstration of the intersection between Christian nationalism and environmental extraction. Okay? Fisherman from Texas. He was in his 20s. This was a young man, okay? I want that to be front and center in your mind for everybody that has the nerve to sit there and say that we're going to just like age out of this crap and that the horrible, ignorant, conservative, older generation, they'll die out and it'll be the browning of the US and everything will be fine. Bullshit. This man was in his 20s, okay? A white man from Texas. And and he was one of the more reasonable and intelligent people that I worked with. And I remember saying to him, I don't like fishing. I don't like killing fish.
Mhm.
I enjoy watching them snorkeling. I enjoy filming them. I enjoy when they try to steal my camera like an octopus did the other day. I enjoy them alive, okay? I find them fascinating and I want to watch them. And we got into this conversation and that's when I found out he was a hardcore Christian. And he quoted Bible verse about dominion over the sea and the birds. I don't know the verse. My husband knows it because he grew up in the church. There's a Bible verse that basically says that, humans, men, not humans, men are bestowed dominion over all of the creatures on the planet. So that moment for me was like, oh, we're never going to see eye to eye because fundamentally your ideology that you believe comes from a supreme being
Mhm.
to you entitlement to extract as much as you want. I don't care about the whole stewardship part, right? Because there's also a part of the Bible that talks about,
Yeah.
being a good steward of those resources. Even if you are really good at doing that and you adhere to that and you're responsible, the fundamental belief that just because you are of the human species as opposed to all the other species on the planet, that you govern and have the right to determine how these resources and other creatures and their habitats and environments that affect everybody, all the different species on the planet, that's all your purview. I can talk to you. And to your point about, folding yourself and bending yourself into these arguments that you think will resonate with these people, I've come to the point where I'm like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to accept your premise. I don't accept that premise. I do not accept the premise that humans are supreme and that we should have dominion over all the other species on the planet. I think it's ridiculous.
Deidre just shared it in the comments, the quote, so that's funny, that's funny.
Oh, thank you, David. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. I will not even. I'm not going to, for the sake of argument, let's say
Yeah.
no. I reject it, and I think that that's part of the problem is that we allow these people
Yeah.
to set the parameters of our argument.
Yes, that's it. Yep.
So that was one example. Another example was a man who told me um, essentially was advising me. This is a very successful person who has he's worth millions, fisherman. And well, actually he's vertically integrated. He owns fish houses and all that. He told me that I was I can't remember how the conversation played out. But basically he was trying to get me to leverage some information against somebody to get them to do what I want. And I told him, I don't operate by extortion. And
Yeah.
he said, that's why you're no good at your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's number 2. So, like, the mentality of that, right? That is the mentality of Trump. That is the mentality of his sixpence. You are only worthy of success. You're only worthy of being taken seriously if you are willing to play dirty.
Yep. Yep. That goes all the way.
Corruption in their eyes is not a problem.
Yes.
Corruption in their eyes is how they get the power that they want.
Yeah. I just want to add that that goes all the way back. I've been doing a lot of exploration about white supremacy conditioning because that's something I had to endure. And part of that is, yeah, they coerce you into doing things that are against your integrity. And then when you try to leave, they bring that up. Well, remember when you did this and this and this? So they do two things there. They pressure you to be like that, and then they hold that
And they
against you.
tell you,
But what you said was super important. We can't let them set the parameters. And more and more, I've been saying this. Like, I'm just, the media, somebody was talking about some new personality in the media that's challenging the Democrats. And I'm like, just by virtue of the fact that the legacy media is talking about him makes me think he's a plant. And I just said this. And it's like the media, and this is why I am in the independent media. I just don't even look at that. And it's like the oligarch media, if they don't want you to, if they're against something, they don't present it as bad. They completely suppress it. That's my whole career as a writer, completely suppressed. It's like they hold up two things, they present the illusion of a choice, and then
"Mm,
whatever side you pick, you've lost just because you're playing their game. You're playing their game. The same thing's happening in the primaries. All these candidates I'm interviewing, they're saying the DNC is pressuring them to drop out. And like all the big donors, it's cheaper to buy the primaries. Legacy media doesn't cover the primaries. It's taking the power from the people. So again, everybody, don't subscribe to the legacy celebrities who have come to Substack. They bring the same mentality. They're not interviewing these primary challengers. We're not getting real representation. But again, like that set the parameters idea, we're going to have to talk about oil before we're done too. I have a note about that. But I was
yeah,
talking to a political candidate and I'm just like, you have to do what they do. Don't offer any apologies. Because he was like, I need to appeal to the red district. And he's like, and I want to admit that Biden made mistakes on the border. I'm like, no, you're already wrong. The second you start apologizing, you lost them. What you need to say is, look, that guy never built the wall, did he? He said he was going to build the wall. Immigration is his fault. You know, he's a failure. He's a loser. He's the one who caused this. Turn it against them. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
and I wouldn't even see my approach to all of that conversation about the wall and immigration would be, where did you come from?
Yeah, well, that's true too. That's another, yeah.
I'm not whether the immigration policy was successful, whether it wasn't successful, whether immigrants should or shouldn't be able to come in the
Yeah,
country, where did you come from? Where did your ancestors come from?
yes.
And
Perfect.
when they came, was anybody waiting for them and asking them for their papers?
Correct.
Was anybody requiring that they go through the rigmarole that immigrants currently go through and have been going through for the last decade?
Mhm. And what I was just about to say is there's so many approaches to dismantle, but we have to go on the attack and dismantle their and not like try to work. Oh, we want to work with them. We want to have this, and it's like no, we've got to stop thinking we have to work with these people. That's the thing. They're out there murdering and raping kids. You know.
Yeah, well, exactly. And our baseline has shifted so far, and we've gotten ourselves into this defensive position so chronically that
Yeah, we don't
that
have to. Yeah.
that there are legitimate pedophile human trafficking. I mean, that is something that's I think somewhat unique to the United States, that we've just accepted that now.
Yes. Yes. That's white
Uh,
supremacy. White supremacy ultimately results in child rape. That's another thing. So go ahead.
Well, yes. I mean, white supremacy results in extraction and exploitation of absolutely everything under the sun,
Yes.
except the little tiny people that, the this percent of the population that benefits,
That get the
right?
levers
I
of
mean,
power. You guys.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. But, I just think that I'm done. meeting people where they are. I'm like, no, 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 no. This is where things are. Now, I'm not going to engage with your conversation and debate over these details of this position that you're taking that assumes things I refuse to accept.
Mhm.
I refuse to accept that humans have dominion over all the other creatures. I refuse to accept that it's okay to, turn people away who are literal, actual refugees. I refuse to accept pedophilia as a as a what are they trying to? They're trying to turn it into some kind of kink now. I mean,
Yeah.
you know. We cannot meet them where they are in their argument. We have to, in my mind, I don't know what we have to do. I know what I'm going to
Yeah.
do. I'm going to look at your argument and say, let me get to the root of this, because the root is rotten. And so I'm not going to argue about anything above the root. We're going straight to the root, and your root is rotten. So
That's
everything above
excellent.
that makes no sense.
Yes, that's absolutely so important. They try to skip over this foundation. And in doing that, when we engage with them, when they built the structure on a foundation that's not true, and we've allowed them to push us over that thing, we end up normalizing it. And this is the
Yep.
fundamental thing we have to understand now. Yes, I've been fighting with so many people about it's totally legal to cross the border and apply for asylum within a year. Not one of the people they've arrested has been here illegally because you were allowed to do that, you know? And that the Democrats just fumble. And this is where I get really angry because the Democrats are exactly the same way. They seem to wait for public opinion to just forget about things. Because I just noted Nancy Pelosi put out a thing saying, "Oh, watch out for rigging the votes in the midterms, like rigging the machines." She just posted a statement on this. And that to me says she knew damn well they rigged it in 2024. And she's just like, I'll just wait until the public is forgotten because they have their and they think they have us manipulated because they own the media. But some of us are clever and we can see through that, oh, everything that the legacy media presents, because I grew up like this, everything presented to me as a lie. It's like, okay, I'm going to look in all those spaces where they're pushing me away from looking, all this empty space where decency was ripped away, and I'm going to look at the outline. It's like making a puzzle where you make the outline first. And I'm going to deduce what it must look like. And then I appeal to smart people like you and Bob Dana and Deidre and all the people, and we can rebuild. But that's fundamentally what we have to do, everybody. I mean, we like 90% of our culture is just dominated by this conservative domination mindset that they coerce us into maintaining and abiding by. And we are just not going to get anywhere until we go out. I keep going back to those fundamental truths. Like in 2020, we gave this crop of Democrats all the power they needed to stop the rise of fascism. They want us to forget that too. They want to blame, oh, we're not ready to elect a black woman or people didn't get out and vote. And they say all these other things built upon that lie. When you go back down to that thing and say, no, we gave you the power. The voters did. We did what you asked. You had everything you needed. You failed us. You guys need to go. And then they start their pressure in different ways, which is usually suppression and censorship. But people are listening. People are out to hear us. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, I did a lot of work volunteering in 2018 for
Mhm.
Andrew Gillen's campaign in Florida. And then in 2020, I was actually on contract to do communications and, organize some organizing to the degree we could, with COVID, and for a local candidate in Florida. But I was working for the entire Democratic Party, really. Um, and you know, look, this part of it is cowardice. Part of it is clinging to an old paradigm of what it means to be mature, decent, and professional, which
Yeah.
rather than actually achieving decency, professionalism, and maturity, what they achieve is eggshell tiptoeing, right?
Mhm.
Like they've become afraid to just speak the straight truth. And then part of it, of course, is corruption, right?
Yeah.
People are benefiting from this,
There we
and
go. Corruption. I was just
yeah,
writing it.
no, absolutely. I mean, Gillum did not get the support from the DNC that he should have
Correct.
at all, at all. And I can say that being on the ground, it was like literally one woman, a retired older woman running the whole campaign for that county and, a handful of volunteers. And they did not give the support to Gillum, which was ridiculous because he was actually mobilizing people to the polls. Then we had, and I also in 2018 witnessed, I served as a poll watcher. I did volunteer poll watching, and I witnessed direct suppression of votes. I witnessed and reported to the DNC, to the legal folks. I was there on my cell phone, like, they're not letting this man vote, even though this is his voting location. They're telling him his polling location is someplace else, but we know it's not because his daughter, who lives with him, voted here. This was a man who didn't speak a lot of English.
Mm. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So, sorry. Go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead if you. I was.
Well, the
I'm gonna,
point being, DNC didn't do anything, and they had an opportunity, and they totally wasted it. And, when you look at the fact that DeSantis got the governorship in Florida and then drove MAGA, right? He was an accelerator for MAGA. Had he not won that seat, things could have played out differently. But
yeah.
anyway, go ahead. You have something to say.
I'm gonna have to. I don't know if you've talked to Natasha K yet.
We've messaged, we haven't spoken.
We'll have to do a talk about that because she worked on the Harris campaign and she was just extremely, well, just furious, rightfully furious and frustrated with the racism she faced. There's all
Mhm.
these factors, though, and friends. I mean, the Democrats want you to just overlook facts. I mean, when I get pressure, well, you got to vote blue no matter who, and I say, well, like Mamdani, the way the Democrats, the establishment tried to sabotage Mamdani. Well, they learned their. It's like, look, there's a line of facts. That's just one, and you can't disregard these facts. And we need to clean house in the DNC before we can defeat MAGA. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said it's the centrists that are the greatest obstacle or the most terrible obstacle to equality. It's not the extremists because the centrists are the puppeteers. There's that issue with Casey in Pennsylvania. His vote was within the margin and it
Mm.
demanded an automatic recount in 2024. He stopped it. And then they're like, well, we wanted to save the voters $1 million in the recounts. It's like, this is your opportunity, a completely legitimate reason to recount the ballots and make sure there was nothing nefarious about the whole presidency. And at this point, I it's just hard for me to accept that there's not just an extreme faction within the Democrats that deliberately wants to sabotage, particularly black women or any candidate. I think they're mad about Obama. They dismantled. I think Democrats are. I think they dismantled. He had this whole grassroots structure in place. Rather than capitalize on that and get good candidates throughout the nation, the DNC deliberately dismantled it. I mean, Hillary Clinton threw a temper tantrum about not getting the nomination that year. I got a big problem with Hillary Clinton. And some people get mad at me for saying that, but it's like, no, you look at the court case that they determined they rigged the primary against Bernie. That was in court. We have to accept facts. And
Well, it's
go ahead.
because, to the point about, like, this posturing that the DNC does, to, that we're the adults in the room. They love that phrase, or at least they used to. The posturing that they do is really funny because at the same time that they present this image and they refuse to just call things as they are, and they talk about reaching across the aisle and trying to be, reasonable and pragmatic or whatever, but they play dirty behind the scenes too.
Yeah.
So, what, if you're still going to be corrupt and play dirty, at least win. At
Yeah.
least, you know what I'm saying? At least call a thing while you're at it. I mean, look, I don't want to get too deep into U.S. politics personally because I
I
have
hear
been in.
you. I
I
apologize.
mean,
It's on my mind.
I used to have, my hair used to be completely brown. You know what I'm saying? Like, I used to be a lot slimmer. Uh, Politics have taken years off of my life. Okay, I was active, and now and then I'll, like, post a screenshot of, like, my Facebook feed from 10 years ago. Like, I was doing all of this stuff when
Yeah.
a lot of people who are now suddenly into politics were not paying attention. You know what I'm saying? I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm done. I moved to
Everybody's
Mexico.
everybody's saying you look great in the quotes, so that's nice. They're being
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But, I mean, my health took a serious beating. Like, yeah, I mean, that the 2018 election, I was out there, like, pounding the pavement, ankles swollen, 90 degrees, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing that again. And
yeah.
I gave up enough of my life to the United States of America, and I'm not doing it anymore. What I do want to talk about
Yes, yes.
Okay. Because you talked about the environmental issues. And what I want to talk about, and the reason, that I started to help people leave the US was because first of all, I wanted to help people like me and my husband who, because of our family composition, because of his identity as a Black man, because of my identity as a woman, who people think is, I don't know, people project all kinds of shit onto me. They think I'm gay. They, I was told I look like a man recently. They
Yeah.
think I'm Black. They think I'm Latina. They think I'm Chinese. People impose all kinds of identity on me. I'm a white woman with short hair. Okay. I'm a cis white woman that is mostly hetero, right? Okay. So, like, that, like, and I'm married to a heterosexual man. Like, but because of those things, um, and because of class, right? Because I got laid off in 2020 from that wonderful job. Um, and neither one of us come from anything. Like, there's no family help, there's no properties, there's no inheritances. We're not from that set, right? So I wanted to help people who were leaving the United States because they knew, right? Because, like us, they knew, like, they're in line, they're in the front of the line for the persecution that is now underway, right? And I only work with US citizens because it's too complex to try to help people emigrate that are trying to retain a green card. Like, it's just I don't have the skills for that, so I only work with US. But when I decided I wanted to do that, it was really important to me to integrate what I've learned about environmental extraction and environmental destruction and colonialism and imperialism as it's playing out in the environment from the US against other countries, and primarily countries that are classified as developing. So,
Hmm.
one example, I think I posted about it and tagged you, is the in the border towns in northern Mexico, you have issues with basically the United States exporting its waste in quantities that Mexico can't handle. And people, it is the same thing that happens Houston, the same thing that happens in Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi,
Yeah.
right? The difference here is that it's impacting people who are racialized as, Mayan or Native, whatever you're calling people. It's the indigenous people. It's the people that
Yeah.
have ethnicity that dates back to, before any Europeans ever got to these continents, right? Those are the people that are primarily impacted. Those are the people that are primarily impacted by poverty, right? That's not a mistake.
Yeah.
That is a result of colonialism. That is a
Yeah.
result of European domination, right? So, and obviously European domination is tied into white supremacy, right? Because Europeans are white now. I mean, whiteness and race is a constantly evolving conversation. But the point being, the people who are already in the worst positions in society as it relates to their political power, as it relates to their economic well-being, as it relates to, patriarchy is a part of this too. Women who don't have, a male head of household, are extremely vulnerable. Children, disabled folks, right? Like, these are the people who get hit worst
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
it's when, there's a toxic landfill that that is looking for a home, right? If like a
Yes.
company that's wanting to dump its waste, they call it the path of least resistance, right? They go where people have the least political power, where they actually already have concentrations of hazardous materials and other environmental issues, have been disinvested in terms of their
Hmm.
infrastructure for years. Like, it's all of those issues that impact people, um, it,
Hmm.
because of the isms,
Yeah.
they are concentrated on those people, right? And part of issue with helping people move, right? And part of the issue with helping people emigrate, the expat set. I hate the expat
Yeah.
industry. Sorry, I know I'm like part of it, but I'm not. If I was, I'd be making a lot more money. Like, there's like
Yeah.
company that gets quoted in every single mainstream media, and it's so irritating. But anyway, um, I didn't want to add to that, right? Like, I only wanted to help people that like don't think that humans. I don't want to work with anybody that thinks just because I'm a
Sure.
human being, I can, I am entitled to clear forest. I'm entitled to, destroy habitat, pollute the water, dump my garbage. Like, I don't want to deal with anybody that has that belief, right? So I wanted to attract people that already cared enough and
Yeah.
had some base level of knowledge about environmental impact. Um, and now, because this is our society is becoming more and more global, right? We're becoming more globally interconnected.
Yeah.
You're seeing these issues play out again and again. So I'll give you an example, a new example that I saw this morning. Now, this is not related to United States immigrants, but it is an example of how colonial machinations date
Mhm.
back. So a long time ago, and my husband and I went to Belize not long ago for a conference and to do some filming around conservation. And we found out that way, way back, a group of Mennonites originate in Europe, mostly like the German area, right? The Germany area.
Yeah.
A group of Mennonites had moved to Belize way, way back. I don't even know.
Yeah.
I wish I had the figures off the top of my head. But they moved to Belize a long time ago. They moved to Mexico. They moved throughout South America and Central America, but in Belize, they've become very much instrumental to food security in Belize because they do intensive agriculture. The issue is, so the Mennonites, first of all, they're white. They're European descended. Um, they don't really intermix much. It's, there's different groups of them and they have various kind of perspectives on intermarriage and all of that. But for the most part, they don't. And when they went to Belize, they implemented basically industrial level agriculture. And so we're talking about monocrops, and people who know about food and the environment know like monocrops are very vulnerable to disease and pests. They, because they lack genetic diversity, they lack, those interactions that healthy food ecosystems
Mhm.
need.
Mhm.
And because of that, they spray a lot of chemicals and they operate big, large swaths of land. And so they clear cut the forest, so they destroy the habitat. And then anytime you clear cut forest, you have issues with erosion, you're
Mhm.
releasing greenhouse gases, you're removing that carbon sink. I mean, there's like multiple levels of harm that occur when you clear cut forests in order to put in monocultural agriculture. Everybody knows this, right? But they did it. And, the Belizean government actually paid them to settle because they needed their services. They work really hard. They come from that like puritanical ethic where they work really, really hard and they're very productive, right? But when you think so when what we were looking at was the pollution that is happening in the cenotes, the I don't know how you say cenote in English.
I don't yeah, that's not a word I know, no.
The they're like pools, they're the water wells or springs.
Okay,
That's
okay, okay.
I think it's spring. I'm so Mexican. Like, I just
That's
forgot the
good.
English word.
Yeah, that's good.
I know, right? So the cenotes are like that now. Grant, keep in mind, like that's people's drinking water. Cenotes are drinking water, especially here in Cozumel. All of our drinking water comes from the cenotes. They're natural springs, fresh water that come up through the karst topography, whatever, limestone, whatever. Anyway, this is polluting the cenotes within a area of forest that is protected and preserved. But, nature doesn't have boundaries like that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So if you are pouring pesticides on your crops and then it
yeah,
rains, it doesn't matter that the forest
yeah,
adjacent a mile away is in a protected zone. It's going to destroy it. So it's just one example of that sort of colonial manifestation, right? You
Yeah.
have people. I'm sure the Mennonites believe they have dominion, right?
Yeah.
And if you drive through their community in Belize, it's weird because it looks like Nebraska. Like
Oh
they've
gosh.
completely remade it into something that is nothing like anything you see in Central
Wow.
America.
Yeah.
It's really weird. So I saw this morning that now there are Mennonites trying to do the same thing in Suriname, an adjacent country in Central America. And I'm sorry, no, it's not adjacent. It's the northern part of
Mhm.
South America. And, they're very aggressive about it. They're very, apparently there have been people that there have been Mennonite groups that, they don't request permission. They go ahead and do it and then ask for forgiveness
Yeah.
later. And they're making good money. It's about profit. Now, I want to say, like, I was advised by the woman who runs the forest trust over there and is working with them that it's not everybody's the same, right? There are Mennonite groups that are um, more focused on the stewardship, and then there are other groups that are more focused
Yeah.
on the profit.
Mhm.
But this is an example of the type of behavior that Europeans and people from the United States have perpetuated throughout the world.
Mhm.
And yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah, the that perpetual present, that no accountability. It's like in the United States, if something is illegal, we should have the determination that it's illegal and prevent them from doing it, not let them do it for 2 years and then determine it's illegal and then not have any consequences. I mean, it all is tying together. But what you were saying, and I wanted to mention the oil industry too, where and I
Mm.
don't know if you read the article I wrote about the Tulsa Race Massacre. I'll get to that in a minute, but the whole oil
No.
industry, they discovered the oil and it was like the Confederate South is like, "Oh, this is the Lord's gift to allow us to restore the glory of white supremacy." That's how they think of oil.
You tell me there was oil in Tulsa and are
I'll
you
tell
saying
you I'll get to it. Yeah, it's a yeah, that's what caused it. But I mean, so like our entire military industrial complex is just a subsidy for white supremacy because the oil industry to this day is controlled by, like the families. It's like one of the most their hiring practices are not very good. They don't hire. There's not a lot of diversity in who they hire, and I looked that up for this article. And yeah, I mean, we're paying to protect all this corruption. I mean, he's the oil fields. It causes pollution all throughout the world. Our military just defends it. They're allowed to have billions. They can control our politics by raising and lowering the price of oil as they want. All that control is there. What happened was this is the story is it's the worst. So when the government was moving the First Nations people to reservations, where did they put them? They put them on the rockiest, most desolate land possible, right? Well, it
Mhm.
came to be that at the end of all that, at one point, the First Nations controlled like a fifth of all the oil reserves because they put First Nation, all the reservations had all the oil reserves. Well, there was
Mhm.
a congressional act about 1890 where they determined, oh, you guys are only stewards of, the surface. You don't have the mineral rights. Like they retrofitted that so they could steal
Mhm.
back. And that's why the First Nations are among the poorest groups. Tulsa
Mhm.
is after the Civil War, the United States, they gave reparations. They didn't give any reparations to any black communities except black communities that had been owned by First Nations people. They said, you have to, and it was just a way of attacking First Nations. Say, if you own
Mhm.
slaves, you have to give them land. So the only land the First Nations could give was their rocky reservation land. Well, they gave them land that was oil rich.
Ah.
And Tulsa, Black Wall Street developed because they had oil. And the Tulsa Race Massacre was to establish oil dominance for white supremacy. And
Mm.
but I mean, it's ongoing. Your environmental thing, and it really is. This is why we can't have solar, we can't have wind power, we can't even develop it because white supremacy controls these toxic, polluting sources of energy, and they refuse to have progress anywhere else.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that history about that particular incident. And it's like, there are so many stories like this. When I was in school for environmental law, if anybody who's gone to law school, like basically the way that you study law is to read these cases. Like, you're reading the case that set the precedent that interpreted the legislation. You don't even read the bill, you
Yeah.
read the case interpreted the legislation because that's how common law works, right? So you get to see, like, you get to hear about all these particular instances where, there was a group that was affected, and in the judge's opinions, you can if you know how to read between the lines, you can see, where they fall politically in terms of how they're interpreted.
Mhm.
It's gonna get way, way worse now. I mean, the way that, the federal, judiciary
Yeah.
system. But I wanted to note something about when you were talking about oil, and, oh, when you mentioned that the energy industry is not very diverse. So I actually one of my clients was a nonprofit organization, a couple of years ago that I did a report. I did a whole research analysis, white paper, and, it was evaluating, actually, it's called Clean Energy Calling, and it was evaluating the major telecoms companies for their, support for clean energy, and it was centered on energy justice. My part was centered on energy justice. So part of the evaluation was actually looking at the internal hiring practices and
Uh,
policies personnel, right? Um, and their contracting provisions to determine, whether they were accomplishing the component of energy equity or energy justice that involves, like, jobs, right? Like, who's getting the jobs? Who's benefiting from this clean energy economy? And what what it looked like was that although the conventional energy, that's what they like to call dirty fossil fuel,
yeah. They're sanitized
conventional
word. They always have sanitized words. They're good at that. Yeah.
Exactly. The conventional energy industry was really like the clean energy industry was not very much more um, diverse in some cases, like with numbers. But when you looked at management, when you looked at the executives, when you looked at who was on the board, right, it was pretty much the same demographics, right? It was wealthy white men.
Yep.
And and believe it or not, it was well, not believe it or not, but it was worse when I looked at companies that were, headquartered in, like, Norway and Germany.
Oh,
When I Yeah, like, the lack of diversity. Well, first of all, I mean, those are very white countries, right? They have very, very small populations of people who are not white, but it was heavily male, very, very heavily male, heavily, like, a certain kind of white man, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, you
I
know what
know
I'm
those
talking about.
guys. Yeah. I don't like them.
You know who I'm talking about, right? And so, um, it was interesting because, I mean, you're always going to have tokenism, right? Democrats are big on tokenism too. You're always going to have people that will toe the line under their identities, and then people can point to them and say, "Look at it." But it was very clear in looking at the clean energy industry that they weren't doing any better when it came to
That's
actually
interesting.
listening to people that didn't look like them.
That's
you
interesting.
know, Oh, yeah. I mean, I was the only woman on my team in my environmental work. Um, I was the only person in my whole department that had any relationships with anybody, like any of the stakeholders who were not white.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and people talk about it. Like, actually, you'll see in writing about the environmental movement, it's white-led organization is like a term. That's how,
Yeah.
so that's like part of this analysis that it's a chicken and egg thing, right? If you don't have people in leadership and you don't have people in charge who are forming relationships with donors, who are determining what the strategy is going to be, right? That understand that justice is important, that understand in order to make progress, we have to challenge the status quo and we have to do things differently. If you don't have people in power in those organizations going to do that, it's not going to happen.
Yes.
And even during the great racial reckoning that wasn't, right? In 2020, it's like there was a lot of appointments of people to
Yeah.
DEI positions and blah, blah, blah. I was on committees.
Superficial
Blah,
stuff.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
Yeah.
Nothing got done. Nothing changed. It was all performative.
People need to understand, yeah, these malicious groups, they're very effective at corroding. I mean, they have their establishment. I mean, we were just talking about it. They give us false choices in the legacy media. They wanted to frame it between these two opposing issues. They own both those issues. We get false
Yep.
choices when we vote because they've corrupted the primaries. That's why people have been saying my phrase, and that's my phrase, blue MAGA. That's my phrase. They're in there in the Democrats because they want to corrupt the Democrats so that they are incapable of doing anything. And what I just
Mhm.
wrote down here was it's not ignorance, it's malice. And so quit with this idea that maybe we should give them the benefit of the doubt because it's darn clear they know exactly what they're doing. And now's the time. You can't say, Walter, I've been doing this a lot where I'm like, Democrats, you have to stop being so divisive. You have to reach across the aisle to me. I take all their arguments and use them against them. They don't like that too much. They get all, I'm like, model for me how it looks to work with somebody who doesn't quite agree with you. And they get all mad.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't have a lot of hope for the US. My
Yeah.
goal, like, I mean, I have family in the US. My daughter
Yeah.
lives in, you know, but my goal now is to help people who are at their who are in, in the same mind of me. Like I paid my dues,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people like, a lot of my clients are older and they're people that like spent their entire lives dedicated to public service and nonprofits and volunteering and, old hippies or whatever. And they're like, I didn't,
Yeah.
I can't. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
I I think you're great. The work you're doing is so important. I appreciate you. Continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, I just wanted to make a point about the environmental impacts of, well, I guess there's so much to say that I can't decide what I want to say. But I guess what I want to say is that for people who are thinking about leaving the United States, um, take this into consideration. Like when, a lot of people are sensitive to the issues of cultural, kind of sensitivity, the language, speaking the language, behaving respectfully abroad, following the law, all of that. People kind of grasp that. But even when they grasp that, they also might be like, "Oh, I bought a plot of land and we just have to clear the forest and then we're going to build this dream
Mm,
house." Please don't. Just
yeah.
please don't. No, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Like, please don't come and start a business that is going to contribute to the environmental
Yeah.
problem.
It's
Please don't.
don't bring
If
the
you want to
toxin.
destroy something, stay home.
Yeah, don't bring the toxin you're trying to escape is the whole point, right? Let's not spread that. And
Exactly.
and I mean, we've been thinking of escaping too, but it's like the encroachments. I mean, things aren't going well. We would focus on Peru, but I mean, the United States, something's got to. I mean, so I've got a little energy left. I got for another week of fight in me at the least, and I'll keep going. But yeah, we'll see. I am kind of running close to the end of time here, and oh, we could keep going. I always love seeing you, Elizabeth.
Oh, you're so sweet. I love seeing you too, and I appreciate all that you're doing. And I want to remind you also that you're not a machine.
I know I gotta sleep. I
And
appreciate, yeah.
internalized capitalism and the internalized male, patriarchal pressure and all of that you are experiencing because you're going to, you will experience it. You can say no to that sometimes.
Yeah, I usually take my Saturday and Sunday for absolute sure. Yeah, you're right. I gotta go get some rest.
Yes, you do. You do.
Thank you
And
so
so do
much.
I.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
thank you. I could talk about this issue forever, but again, energy. We got to conserve it. We got to conserve it. And everybody that joined today, I just want to say thank you. And I am looking for new paid subscriptions. Actually, consultations have slowed down. I think people are really freaked out about travel. And also, I'm not published in any mainstream media. So if you have any mainstream media connections that you would like to direct my way so that I can get the word out about conscientious immigration and get more
great.
clients, I would greatly appreciate it. Walter, rest.
Yes.
Thank you for everything you're doing. And thank you for having me today.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. I just want to reiterate, you guys, please subscribe to Elizabeth. And if you've got, it's like, look at who you're subscribing to. Don't give that money to millionaires. Just please don't. I know we're up against the wall economically. Millionaires are not going to help us. There are no good ones. They are just not. So just be discerning and help us out. And yeah, we love you all. I love you too. And best to your family there.
Oh, thank you.
We'll
All
talk.
right. Have a good one, Walter. Bye, everybody.